Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here today. Jason and Prophet, we're very excited for you to be here. I cannot wait to hear your conversation with Sierra. This month at the Trust really is about returning to our new normal. We've all reached a place where we've, been living with COVID for a couple of years, and we're relieved. The Omicron wave is receding, and we are continuing our legacy of innovation and bringing, our teams and our residents back together for that completely essential type of connection that can really only take place in person. And could not be any more excited about that. At the end of the meeting, I'll take questions for Q&A to advance them to the panel and talk a little bit about what we're doing with our spring campaign and a few other items. But for now, I would like to introduce Sierra, our Chief Real Estate and Investment Officer.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm super excited to get the conversation started. This is a little bit different than some of the interviews that we've done before. I think you're going to find some innovative discussion, and I'm looking forward to it. So without further ado, let me introduce both Jason and Prophet. Jason Riff is the Director of Housing Initiatives for United Way of Greater Los Angeles. Jason focuses on opening access for affordable capital, supporting housing policy, and innovative methods to increase the availability of affordable housing. Previously, Jason led the Community Partnership for Solo LA Impact Fund, the largest Section 8 landlord in Los Angeles County. He is committed to ensuring the most valuable people across the Los Angeles can afford a place to call home in the community of their choice. Jason is an avant-garde patron of the member of Los Angeles County Museum of Art Legacy Circle. He graduated with honors from Morehouse College and received a Master of Social Ethics from Union Theology Seminary and Columbia University. Welcome, Jason. Prophet Walker, welcome. Co-founder and CEO of Treehouse, grew up in South LA while amidst poverty, violence, and homelessness in his neighborhood community was always at his core. Prophet is deeply involved in both criminal justice and education reform and serves on multiple nonprofit and civic boards. In 2014, Prophet ran for the California State Assembly, coming in second. This passion for reform was triggered by his personal experience of being incarcerated at 16 and sentenced to spend 6 years within an adult prison. While incarcerated, he started a statewide program that allowed inmates to earn a 2-year college degree, and today thousands of inmates participate in the program. Prophet received a degree in civil engineering in 2015. He then attended Loyola Marymount University, where he received a Sorry for repeating myself. President Obama, in 2015, he received President Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama invited Prophet to attend the State Union to honor his efforts to reform our criminal justice system and commitment to our children. Prophet's experience surrounding the community strength and human connectiveness inspired him to create Treehouse. Recognizing the power of community in proximity and shared humanity, Prophet leads the company day to day with a focus on acquisitions research, property selection, and investor relations. Prophet enjoys spending his free time with his daughter and friends. Thank you both for joining us this morning. And apologies, I'm trying out some new glasses, so trying to get them to work. All right, so Jason, United Way's leadership through Home for Good has been transformative in every sense of the word. From the creation of Pathways Out of Poverty Plan in 2007 to the creation of Funders Collaborative in 2011, to the passage of Proposition HHH and Measure H in 2017, to accelerating permanent supportive housing challenge in 2019, the passage of Measure J in 2020, and now the Affordable Housing Initiative. United Way has consistently convened diverse stakeholders to create a momentum needed to truly change housing and homelessness in our region. How do you think the Affordable Housing Initiative, in terms of the legacy of innovation and what is estimated impact of packaging small lot development methods with innovative financing methods for acquisition, redevelopment, and construction? It's a loaded question.
Got it. I'll try and be as clear as you are in that question, but thanks for inviting us here today. The glasses look great, Sierra. I think you'll get them working soon. Prophet, good to see you. I know you've been all over, but excited to hear your comments. So look, a bit of that work predates my time at United Way. So I really saw how United Way engaged with the greater LA community from the outside looking in. And when I came here from Solar Impact, I was tasked with bringing kind of a private sector fund thinking to addressing the problems of ending homelessness and building affordable housing. And so I launched a fund. It's an ambitious raise over 3 phases. We are closing phase 1, hopefully in the next hour or so. And the thinking is, yeah, we're very excited. It's been a lot of work. The thinking is, let's raise private capital, invest in sites that are traditionally avoided by larger scale developers, so small lot sites, infill sites, provide the cheapest product on the market, and leverage our capital markets in partnership to build this housing that's needed quicker and cheaper than anyone else is doing in LA. We have the most flexible product. That's one of our innovations. Again, we have the cheapest product. We also restrict our rents for any unit that's built using our capital. So it incentivizes a developer with the cheaper capital to reduce their rents to a level that's affordable for someone who would make minimum wage working full time, 40 hours a week. Their rent is still 30% of their income. Prophet will get into some of this. He's one of our developers in this work. And, he's taking a mid 6-figure haircut on revenue year over year just to participate in our program. And so while there are incentives for the developer, while there's protections on affordability for the tenants and maintaining the affordability, we're really seeing great partnerships in both the nonprofit and for-profit sector in moving this work forward, particularly because of our product and the innovation there. I think once we can refine this a bit more on the financing side, then we can unlock more potential on what we can build. And we're really excited for some of the projects in our pipeline. In this first phase I've raised about 62 million. We have a land trust deal. We have an infill deal. Everything's near transit and walkable to transit. All our developers are minority-led developer firms or minority-owned firms. So in addition to the innovations in affordability and financing, we're really leaning heavy into racial equity, which I think is new for this space and needed. I'd love to hear Prophet's reflection on what we're doing well before we toss it back to Sierra.
All right. Hey, everyone. What's Jason doing well? I'm not really sure, actually. Next. So it's interesting. I think there's what's really powerful is, from Treehouse's perspective, is that there was clear sort of natural and serendipitous alignment between the vision of United Way and Jason spearheading this and what Treehouse was doing. And, Treehouse started, 6 years ago. And we recognized just from a capitalist perspective that we had a competitive advantage against other developers if we focused on these small lots. There were many of them throughout Los Angeles. Our ability to create what we call good density seemed exciting. All too often, people thinking to solve the housing issue or the housing crisis, from my opinion, tend to build things that they themselves wouldn't live in. And I think that's as much as housing is a question of getting people off the streets or just ensuring that one of our number one basic human needs are met, it is a question of dignity as well. And so I think United Way's approach, setting aside sort of the financial and strategic genius tied to it, the dignity first, and the understanding that concentrated poverty is not helpful to anyone. You read my background in various stages of my life. Actually, really until recently, have I only lived in concentrated poverty, and that includes being a student in college, right? Like, college is the one place where we see the powerful impact of having a network that's diverse in thought and economic reality, that many people do not get to actually experience. And building and coming out of poverty, I remember one of my friends pulled me to the side in frustration, and he's like, living over here, there's no upside. Like, my network is going to only be, the bike shop. And not to suggest that there's something wrong with the bike shop, but the point he was making was that it's limited and it's clearly capped. And so I think that's the secondary thing that United Way is doing right, which is not concentrating poverty. And this ability to work with private capital and strategic philanthropic capital allows for actual and true mixed income, which I think is going to yield powerful results. And frankly, when you tie that to community and just the human spirit, it's a little bit sick that we define our community relative to our income. That's not tribe. That's not how we were sort of reared as a human species. And I think core to this economic model is an incredible human model as well. And then on the actual execution of it, it takes a lot, right? It takes someone who can articulate a vision across a breadth of people with different experiences, which Jason has done an exceptional job at speaking to finance people to understand the human mission, and people will have merely a human mission to understand the realities of capital markets. That's a complex and it's a serious feat. And then being able to then structure it where there's proper diligence, there's proper checks in place, that hold both the developer as well as the philanthropic partner accountable. So I'll stop there.
You could probably go on and on though. It's really unicorn thinking.
So let's get short after that.
The creativity with like kind of a human spirit, and then the complexity but simplicity and the financial model, I think, is really what brings it home. A lot of what you said resonated. I too grew up in affordable housing and project-based Section 8 housing. And so when we build housing or we look at design models, I really try to look at the experience of the resident, what they're going to experience when they move in. I don't know about you, but my apartment had that horrific orange carpeting that I think was like standard throughout the region at that time. And I will never put any orange carpeting in buildings, but it's really looking at that from that experience and how can you make it better for the next person. And so a lot of what you said resonated with me personally. So thank you. So Prophet, Treehouse has been described as a capitalist commune trying to cure LA's loneliness, among other things, and failed to bring us together in the New Yorker. How are you advancing the age-old concept of co-living, venture, capital-backed development, and what brought you to this work?
Yeah, so it's a big question, and we got some the media never fails to have some salacious headlines to pull you in. Luckily, if you read the article, Dan was quite gracious, but I'll start with the human side of this, and what got me into this work. So I'll start there. So you mentioned that I was formerly incarcerated. I grew up in South Central Watts. I was abandoned in the housing projects. And I got to go to Loyola, and there was a point in my life where I had come home and I'd worked tirelessly to separate myself from poverty. Right, I wanted the mentality that I was taught growing up was to get up and get out of the hood. No one actually told me that someday someone was going to say it's up and coming and now it's a C-class neighborhood turning into a B, turning into an A, and I should invest. No one actually gave me that message, but it was to get out of the hood. And so that's what I chased. And in the process of doing that, I started feeling just lonely, quite honestly. And I was living in Playa Vista, which was held to be this sort of idyllic community. And everyone around me, majority, were wealthy. And what I realized is that wealth was buying us isolation. We weren't interacting with one another. We weren't talking to one another. And community was more of a buzzword than an actual reality. Whereas when I was in South LA, I dealt with some of the most traumatic times of my life, as well as even incarcerated. And community is the thing that kept my backbone strong. It's what kept my spirits up, which taught me humility and to be gracious. And I felt that was missing. And then I got to meet Vivek Murthy, our current Surgeon General. At the time, he was Obama's Surgeon General, and he talked about how the greatest epidemic facing human history right now is actually loneliness and isolation. And that made me look at how we're isolating ourselves, and looking at the single family model, looking at the continued rise in debt and inability to actually interact in the housing market. All of those sort of things, as well as my own background, led me ultimately to a place of building housing for community first would be one of the most important things I did in my career. From there, you got to take idealism and match it with reality. And I had the benefit of running for office and realizing how difficult bureaucracy is. And I didn't necessarily want or believe that in the middle of a housing crisis, we needed yet another capital A affordable developer. We needed to come up with some other solutions. Now, not to knock that, the people who deal with tax credits and the how slow that moves and the patience therein, that's important work, but it just wasn't work for me. And so I wanted to come up with a different solution. And I remember Teach for America, and I went to City Year and all these different places, and the mayor of Compton, and everyone was like, our service workers have nowhere to live in this city, and they're a paycheck away from being homeless. And we've seen that exasperated through COVID. And so that led me to look at this model of how do I bring community, and the age-old point you're saying in different parts of Europe and Africa, actually everywhere I've traveled outside of some parts of the Western world, policies, lending, capital is actually all structured around communal. In America, we're structured around hyper-individualism and home ownership, direct home ownership. And so I started looking more and more into things like urban kibbutz in Israel, started looking at the totality of Denmark as a example, or different places in Africa, in figuring out how could we bring a model to America that wasn't counterculture, right? In the 70s, we tried this. They called us a capitalist commune in the article, but the truth is in the 70s we tried communes, but they were counterculture and they were easily debunked. I wanted to focus in a very nuanced way, both in capital, in marketing, in design, of how do we actually bring something that's popular culture and can touch the overall zeitgeist. And so those are my sort of background experiences that led me to that, and then sort of shaping that around what's reality today to sort of project out into the future of, honestly, I actually just believe that we're better off living in community. And that doesn't mean, tearing down the nuclear family or anything. That means that Jason, who may live in an apartment with a neighbor that might be 5 feet away, like, you should know who they are. They're probably helpful to your overall life. And some should be rich, some should be poor. And so that's sort of what led me to it, and how I started thinking about it. And then my experience in real estate. I built things like Ace Hotel. I built really expensive apartment buildings. I built restaurants. I've owned them. I've developed them. I've literally constructed them with my bare hands. So I understood literally every facet of the real estate sort of economic buildup and how to navigate that.
Well, and Sarah, I love that New Yorker article. Prophet doesn't know this, but I share that with every donor and every investor and all the conversations I have, because we really leaned into community and kind of the co-living environment with the first phase of this fund as well. And so if you have the opportunity, everyone should tour one of the Treehouse Hollywood sites. And when I did a tour, I encountered an LGBT individual who was kicked out of his home because his parents didn't agree with his lifestyle. The individual was homeless for a number of years and then found their way to the Hollywood location that Treehouse built. And they pay, $134, $135 in rent per month, and utilities are included, and community takes care of not just that individual, but others like him, who also live in that building alongside directors of communication for major tech companies. And so Prophet's really created this great vision for what living in LA and living together can be. And maybe, Prophet, you could talk a bit about the Lemur Park project that you're starting to build, and how you're thinking of community in that project.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll briefly, we've had this iterative approach around community. And first there was a deep dive of how many people could know one another and feel safe. And so we literally had focus groups. We had individuals who specialized in co-ops and communes and all of the different forms of community housing. I've stayed and lived in communities that range the gambit, from just going and living in dorms to all types of things that are fascinating, and just learning how humans sort of interacted. And one of the things that we found most compelling, and this was an experience when I ran for office, which is one of the greatest voting blocks in America are seniors. And I would go to these senior homes and they would light up, because I was 25 running for office and it was a pretty popular race. And so I had a massive group of people that would go with me anywhere I went, literally 50, 60 young people, just any day of the week. And we would go into these old folks' homes, our senior homes, and their spirit would just light up. And my team started structuring my senior visits because I just wouldn't leave. They'd be like, "You got to fundraise," and I'm like, "I'm not leaving." And so they started reshaping how I would visit these things. But I saw something that was just so beautiful. I saw humans like older and younger and in between sharing life together and games and just a host of things. And I was like, man, we're really putting our wisdom out to pasture here in America. And this sucks. Doesn't feel that great. And then I thought about my own life, where I'm a single father, and my daughter's mother is a single mother, and we've had the good benefit of leveraging a massive community of people to support us. Literally, my daughter travels in a band of 3 from house to house. She has 3 friends, and they'll stay with one another weeks at a time. But me leading a high demand career as a single parent would be impossible without community. And then from there, everything in between, and looking at young people wanting to move back to an area like Lemur Park, but Lemur Park is becoming more and more expensive and pricing people out. I always say the first frontier of what we call gentrification are actually well-meaning people, and these are people who just got out of college and they're making $40,000-$50,000, and they realize pretty easily, simple math, that if 5 of them come together, they could rent a house, and they push out some mother single mom or something who's been living there. And so Lemur Park takes everything we've learned in Hollywood, which was a single person's vision at first. And in Hollywood, we started having seniors move in and families move in. And I was like, oh man, people really want community. Well, Lemur Park leans into that. And so it's a compilation of spaces for families that are intentional around the family life. It's a compilation of spaces for seniors. We're going to encourage senior living. In partnership with United Way, we're going to bring close to 50% affordability into the unit, and then the ground floor will have a market that, for the first time in a very long time, it'll be a top tier market for the community to come in and engage in. But that market will be more of the sort of co-op market, where it's again the ethos of community and connecting the rest of the community, and doing that. In doing that, we're able to utilize, again, good density, whether it's the market co-op, whether it's the increased amount of units, and some people renting by the individual bedrooms and bathrooms, thereby offsetting what would be the cost for a family, and looking at this as an entire concept is real. It's our opinion that that's going to be pretty groundbreaking in how housing is taking shape. Before, the mantra was live, work, play. That's cute, but I think the future is, how do we live in community truly? How do we get one another to support? And so that's Lemur. I'm quite excited about.
Definitely excited to see how that turns out. Jason, you and your team are working to improve the efficiency of housing construction, active private capital markets at scale, and create communities of choice. Please share how these objectives intersect and why it's so vital to defining the decades to come.
Yeah, I think this touches on a bit of that concentration of poverty note that Prophet started with earlier, so maybe I'll start there. I think we've all witnessed what happened with affordable housing, public housing over the last century. And you saw these massive buildings. I moved to LA from New York, and you see, 400 people living in a building, 1,000 people, 800 people, all on a voucher, all on some subsidy, and you're just concentrating the thinking the mobility choices in one space that is detrimental to the culture and to those people who live in the building. To the access to resources note Prophet also shared earlier, if the only person you encounter is the bicycle mechanic on the corner, how do you then learn to grow into a larger contributor to society, right? And so we are really leaning heavy into, okay, smaller buildings, but still have density, but mixed income and mixed geography, to say, let's not build all of these in South LA, but let's use our leverage, use our capital to build affordable housing on the West Side and in Long Beach and in the Valley and in places of need, Pacoima, Silmar, Palmdale, Lancaster, but also in the Pasadenas and other places, so that those who we hope to house, low acuity, currently or previously homeless individuals, have a choice in where they want to live. So that's the thinking there. And the private capital is the mechanism that we have to make this happen. But it really comes from the will of United Way and working with mission-aligned developers. We could deploy that capital anywhere. There's no restriction, but we are making the choice. We're working through CDFI partners that believe in our mission. We're working with developers who agree with what we want to do. I know Skid Row Housing Trust and United Way have had conversations to say, let's use all private capital and build in the South Bay or in Long Beach. And anyone on this call is welcome to reach out and get more information and see if we can do something together. But that's our motivation. That's the power of United Way, to say, let's move our corporate partners, let's use our leverage for good, and then how can we extend on that good to change something and change the historic issues that we're working against.
Thank you. And Prophet, could you share a bit about the 1920 South Gramercy Place? What is your vision for this community, and how did it access to single source of capital accelerate getting into production in September of 2021?
Yeah, so that project, Koreatown, which always excited me, just before we even met United Way. And the reason it excited me is because Koreatown is very much a working class neighborhood, and it's incredibly diverse. The area around it is an amenity in and of itself, right? Thousands of restaurants. It's incredibly walkable. It's a space that has a true culture, frankly, of community. And I think the spirit of America, in that the sort of immigrant spirit, is that of the communal nature. It's what it wants to be. And I think Koreatown, and its immense amount of density, the sort of almost 24-hour nature of it, sort of lends itself here. And so when we acquired this property, we were super excited that, like, oh, we're going to be able to build a community within a community. And our property was the only there were 2 single-family homes left on the block. Everything else was large 6-story apartment buildings, and the home that was there was vacant, and so it was just sort of a great sort of example of America, or of Los Angeles smaller lots that's sitting in just waiting for greater density to be built up. And it inherently had a lower entry point for rent than our Hollywood building would be, even if I used all market rate investors, just because the area itself, right? Like, real estate really is a matter of how much you buy the land for, where's the local rents and market, and the cost of construction and the cost of financing. Like, you put those 4 things together, that's going to be an outcome of your rents. And so Treehouse, or Treehouse Koreatown, we got really excited because we're like, we're gonna build something that's naturally more affordable. And it had always been this. I went to Roy Choi early on and say, Roy, if I gave you 6 units and I'll figure out how to get them sponsored, but with you and Nancy Silverton and a group of other top chefs, would you guys sponsor them for up and coming, people who are otherwise poor and want to be chefs? Would you teach them how to be chefs? And he is like, yeah, I'd love to do that. And I was like, okay, I got to figure this one out. I don't know how I'm going to fund this, but we're going to figure this out. And there was always these, like, from the beginning, how do we build a deeper sense of community? To Jason's point, this diversity we saw in income and the beauty that has been birthed out of that in Treehouse Hollywood. I was like, oh, it's going to double down here in Koreatown. And core to the Treehouse model is if you're a resident of one of our buildings, you're a resident of all of our buildings. So you'll be able to go to access the common space in Lemur Park or in Hollywood. You'll be able to go to the events. We have a directory where you'll meet all of the other residents in the entire ecosystem. And again, giving you a network that I've been blessed with. Like my own success is a reflection of my entire network. And so I think Koreatown sort of sits at the core of that. And then comes along the single source of capital that is incredibly mission aligned. When I tell you, anyone that would give me the time of day to listen, I would tell them, unions, everyone, I was like, if you just built your own housing or you did direct investments and we cut out all of the like multitude of layers of fees that come along with this, and by the time it gets to me, I'm required to give a 20 to 30% yield, we could build naturally occurring affordable housing. If you looked at it long term and not just a quick flip 3 to 5 year development turnaround, we could build true community in addition to that, right? And Koreatown's going to get to do this. And the single source capital does a couple things. I have one investor to talk to, which is helpful. And good or bad, we're able to sort of be in lockstep with one another and communicate, and that is massively helpful for time on the team and our overall team's bandwidth. And I don't have to hire more people and continue to tick costs. It's all just ticking costs. And then the nature of the capital being lower interest requirement, and them investing the entire amount of capital allowed for 50% of our entire building to be accessible, and to be accessible for low acuity people that are unhoused. That's quite powerful. And the brand of Treehouse and the way we build, right? Like our building, to the point that the first thing I said was the importance of building housing with dignity. I don't care if you're homeless or formerly homeless, when you walk into Treehouse, you're gonna have the same dignity. I lived in Treehouse for a year and a half. I'd live in every single Treehouse that I build. There will be no difference in the quality at all, ever. And I think that that's important and powerful, right? This from the soundproofing, where people can have individual respite and like safe space, to the community spaces that are intentionally a combination of inspiring, meditative, collaborative. We have these large communal dining halls where, since the opening of Treehouse, we've had Sunday dinners or Saturday brunches every single Sunday, where 50 to 70 people will show up, friends and family and residents alike all come together. We're going to do that at a greater scale at Treehouse Koreatown. And when I say a greater scale is we're going to bring in people who I'm going to go off a little bit, but I think we look at homeless people not as ourselves. too often. Like we're solving something for them. The truth is we're solving something for ourselves, and that's the truth. And I think Koreatown is truly going to be a reflection of that in every way, where the humanity will speak through in no uncertain terms. And people will be inspired and collaborative and connecting together. And the capital that we have, if I can trade off deferring my potential upside and returns as a 34-year-old to 10 to 12 years from today, or whenever it comes around, that's totally fine. If we're truly building for humanity and not for capital markets only.
I'm super excited to see that one come to life as well. You guys have a lot you're working on. Could you both share with us why private capital and new housing typologies are so vital to accelerating production of affordable housing throughout the region and the state and the nation? Perhaps you could start, Prophet. I think you guys have covered this, but if there's anything that you guys haven't said already, feel free to add in there.
Can you say the first part one more time? I'm so sorry.
Oh, it's okay. Why private capital and new housing typologies are so vital in accelerating the production of affordable housing.
Yeah, the world's changing. That's the truth. The population has ballooned. Populations are ballooning in major city centers and major cores. People are looking for jobs. We have a disparity of sort of haves and have-nots. We have a friend of mine wrote, America doesn't have an economic crisis, it has a constitutional crisis. We really have a question to ourselves of how we, as a union, we're going to meet the ideals of the founding fathers, where everyone is truly has the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I'd arguably say we're not doing the best at that. And so looking at new avenues and new models that honors sort of the innovation drivers of capitalism, right? Capitalism really has pushed the world forward in many ways. It's an incredible innovation driver. So looking at and honoring that, but also looking at the lives of people and saying we can do more, and we can do so in a more humane way. And when I look at the world broadly and all the trends, right, of people moving into these major cities, what are the implications for self-driving cars, and what are the implications for technology and human labor being sort of less needed in certain aspects and areas. You know, I watched in this episode in the South where this truck driver broke down in tears. I mean, just a rugged, sort of hard truck driver broke down sobbing when the first time he witnessed a self-driving truck, 18-wheeler, right? That's a real human issue. And the importance of having models that are focused on the issues of what the future looks like, how we're going to live, is probably the most important work we can do over the next 50 to 100 years.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, Sierra, I'd almost toss it back to you, and I know Stephanie's on this call also. There might be a few other developers. But look, you ladies like inspire me to commit to this race and to this work, because we've talked and you've shared how you've had one site and needed 12 capital sources, and it took 5 to 7 years to build that one building. And over that time, the expenses and the inefficiencies you had to house, 60 to 80 people. I mean, with us creating this fund and deploying it in an accessible, affordable way, with mission-aligned projects and people to house those who are most vulnerable, we're building this stuff in 18 to 24 months. My biggest issues are that it rained and Prophet had to stop for 2 weeks, right? Like, it's the capital's here. You guys know the process of permitting entitlements and everything else. That's the stuff I don't know as well. And so working together, I think this is the innovation. And for those who are in this work, I think it's pretty clear this is a good way to go, to the extent that we can regulate the private sector and the capital markets to do good work and not let them take over and co-opt what we're trying to do.
Yeah, that's always key, because once you start to make any sort of profit, even in affordable housing, then you see all of that come in and they want to capitalize off of it. And then it gets super regulated. And there we are with 11 sources of funding again, and we're all competing against the same land, the same type of capital in there. So definitely excited to see how this pans out, and we are looking forward to working with you guys in the future and doing some projects. And I know Stephanie is on here, and we didn't ask if you wanted to speak, but do you want to add anything to that?
Stephanie, I think Sarah just called you into the conversation. I don't know if she was ready.
I don't know if you're ready, but I mean,
it looks, you guys, that was very well done, but it looks like she has dropped off for another call.
Okay.
We'll send her the recording though, and I'll cue her to the time mark.
Yeah. All right, Jason, racial inequalities in housing, education, and economic mobility are all intertwined to serve the widen and sustain racial wealth gap and integral poverty. Could you share some of the strategies United Way has implemented in addressing these inequalities? I know everyone here will be excited to hear the vision for the Women Investment Network.
Oh, interesting. This is where Jet is like, Jason, you should have read these questions before. So the Women's Investment Network is kind of my second baby, my second dream that I've started since I've been here. It's this idea to coalesce 200 low to moderate income women, Black and brown women of South LA, South and Central. That's the geography is flexible. Support them in saving a certain amount of money individually, and then we'll pool that savings together. We'll provide supportive services, supportive access to capital, emergency funding as needed to continue to support them to save. Pool that savings, invest it into a building so that those women now have an ownership stake in a building in their community, but also possibly a building that they would live in. Koreatown has allocated a conversation to see how much and at what level we can invest the Women's Investment Network into that building. These are small dollar investors. They're giving anything from $10 to $100 a month. We're going to try and cap them around $5,000 per person just to ensure that it's equitable and they can have success. And we'll actually match their return on investment. So the idea is we invest in a building. It's almost impossible for this group to purchase a home across LA, so they can't get the appreciation. If they do purchase a home, there's seconds and thirds on the home, so by the time they sell, they really haven't earned any real equity. So why not own a building that is churning double-digit returns, and they can have a piece of that upside? So that's the thinking there. It's an asset building strategy, it's a wealth building strategy, but more importantly, it's community ownership. And it's access to capital for people that would never have access to something like that. We've done focus groups, and the investment deals that these women are sourcing are pyramid schemes and noni juice and all this stuff. And it's like, or they have their bank account where they get 0.14% a year. And so how does someone like that, who actually saves better than I do, who has more in their savings and has done more work than I have, how does someone like that have access to a platform to increase their wealth? And so that's what the Women's Investment Network is.
I'm also very excited to see that prosper, because it is a space for women that I know that often is overlooked. Is how do you get access to investments? It's not something being taught, as a young girl. That is not something that really people spend the time to teach about wealth or spending money and how to save and how to invest. It's something that you learn only if you have access. And, as Prophet, you pointed out earlier, if you only have access to what's around you, then how do you get access to that without somebody bringing it to you? So I'm excited to see that, and excited for the women that get to participate in that. So Prophet, I'll leave the last question to you, developer to developer. I'd love to give you the last word. What would you like the audience and folks listening to recording to take away from today's conversation?
Run fast to go invest with Jason. He's closing the first fund, and I think he'll move fast to more closes. So I think get in on that. I think the future of housing is a combination of it's community at its core is the future of housing, which means mixed incomes, mixed races, it truly means the fullness of the American dream. It's what we all have sort of bought into, and I think we should be building and putting our capital around the ideas in which we pledge allegiance to. And I'd say from there, if we do a lot of thinking, Jason's team, my team, sometimes it feels like the teams are blended, but we do a lot of thinking around innovative housing as well as innovative capital stacks, and we need more partners to help us think through this. There's probably some wild idea that you might have thought is wild in isolation that other people are actually thinking about as well, and the combination of those ideas, and sort of not this like mine, but like true collaboration might lead to a creative upside. And so I think that's probably what I'd say. And the more we get also the city involved in this, I've been one of the biggest loudmouths to the city that our policies should be reflective of community building. When I talk to lenders, our lending policies should be reflective of shared housing and community building. Right now, there's too many hurdles. Many hurdles that we've gotten over and overcome, but we shouldn't have to hurdle over anything. There should be a very clear and straight path to continue in this good work.
Well, I'd love to continue those conversations and collaboration with the two of you in the future, either on camera or off, and with our friends out there, because I do feel like you guys are starting really a renaissance of community building and development, and really bringing it back to that center core of community. And some of the things that you brought up earlier about being at a point in our country where we as a union really need to reflect on it. We are at an inflection point, and in order to move beyond that, it's going to take having those open conversations, and you only do that if you're living and interacting with each other. So I applaud you for all the work that you're doing. Definitely see the vision, and would welcome any of those collaboration calls in the future. So thank you guys both very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, I'll turn it over to Jet.
That was fantastic. Thank you both so much for being here. And this is actually one of my favorite meetings in the history of this series. And my phone is blowing up with texts. There are other longtime listeners who are expressing much the same. So I will go through a couple of housekeeping items, and if there are questions, I'll advance one, but I know we're very close on time and I haven't yet seen one in the chat. I think everybody was probably just on the edge of their seat enthralled. We hope everyone will save the date. Our spring campaign is coming up April 1st through the 22nd. We are revitalizing all 12 of our community gardens so that residents can experience the health benefits of gardening. And, That's mental, physical, and social well-being. And there are opportunities to donate, sponsor, and volunteer. And I'm happy to announce that Lionsgate Entertainment is the lead sponsor for the campaign. And we don't have a name for it yet because we've offered them the opportunity to do that. But we're really, really excited. We have the same calls to action every month. You can make a gift to support our work. These buttons on your screen are live. And if you add your voice to our advocacy efforts, we do a lot of work around the preservation and acceleration of affordable housing and acceleration of development of affordable housing. And then you're probably here today because you're on our mailing list, but you can always share that link with a friend and tell them what a great time you had with Sarah and Jason and Prophet. I do not have any questions for you guys, so I'm just so grateful to you both for being here today. Thanks for that.
Thanks, Jet. Talk to you soon.
All right, see you soon. Thanks.